you!
You stole my life.
Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, High Plains Drifter, Fistful of Dollars, Hang 'em High. What do these things have in common? Well, the revenge stories, and westerns, and action movies. So today we're looking at a comic book from Aftershock Comics called Undone by Blood. Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson are the writers, and Sam Cavella is listed as doing the artwork and as being a co-creator of the story. So when the comic book opens up, we get this story of a Western dude here, Saul, who's been out on the range and comes home to his wife, who's been shot, and his son, Marion, who's missing. A familiar trope in Western stories where the son or daughter goes missing, a la The Searchers, and the hero has to ride to find them. And we find out soon enough that this book is being read by this young girl, and we think her name is Ethel, at least that's what her ID says, but it could be fake. It's 1971, and she's traveled to Arizona to track down the men who killed her family several years ago. And the hunt takes to this town in Arizona where she looks for information. So after stowing her gear and stopping off at a convenience store to get what she thinks is going to be needed goods in a wound repair kit, she makes her way to several bars to try to get information on the murder. And the story flashes back continually to her reading of the novella, and it's paralleling the same type of story where Saul is going to ride off and find Marion, and his wife tells him, don't come back unless you have him. And he says, well, that would make a whole lot of sense. It's very tropey, it's very pulpish Western, and it's a great part of the story. And I love how the artwork here has that type of feel as it flashes back between the current storyline and this book. So she rides off to this town of Sweetwater and once again enters this bar. Now, this part of the story, I guess, makes sense for her character. She's a pretty neophyte when it comes to the detective skills. I mean, she basically walks in and starts pumping these guys for information. And it's not a very smart move, as they don't know her and they don't like interference. And she's pretty direct in how she does this. So she ends up getting her ass kicked by these guys who may or may not have something to do with it. And they tell her how they remember this happening in a hotel several years ago, and that the girl, they have presumed through urban legend that the girl was involved somehow in setting this whole thing up, which gets her ire up, and she lays one on this dude, but they in turn take her outside and beat the living crap out of her. I like how this panel has all that red involved, as you can see, just the violence involved in the beatdown for this girl. And we get a panel here with this mysterious stranger who she seems to have known or knows or has seen before, who takes all her stuff. And the spurs is a clue because in the previous panel we've seen spurs. So we either think that this guy's involved somehow in what happened to her family or knows something about it. She remembers this from her past. And she repairs her wounds, and she basically is sitting there when she gets picked up by the cops, and that's really the end of the story. I like this first issue. It really had a lot of world building and setting up, and it had a nice juxtaposition between the book she's reading and her story. And we're kind of interested in both. We want to see where both storylines are going to go and how they're going to parallel the main story. So it's very interesting in that fact. It does really set up issue 2, and it leaves you wanting to read issue 2 because you've only gotten pieces of the story. And I'm sure as things go on, we're going to get more flashbacks to what happened to this girl in the past. And like a lot of books, it's crucial that issue 2 builds upon this first issue and really maintains the upward projection, the upward climb this book is on. A lot of books can't do it. A lot of independent books can't do it. Recently, 20XX had a phenomenal, out of the world #1, and #2 is horrible, absolutely horrible, past the point that #3, no matter how good it is, and I didn't bother, continue reading it, will make me want to continue with it. So I think this is similar. I like this book. I like where it's going. I love the revenge Western angle on it. I just want to see where issue 2 is going to go, and if it goes to a good place and it keeps on building momentum, it's going to keep me wanting to read it. But I highly recommend issue 1. It was one of the better books that came out last week. Probably my #1 book, and #2 would be Thor. But #1 would be Undone by Blood. I'm just interested to see where this story goes. And Aftershock has produced quite a few good comic books recently, so I hope this trend continues. So I hope you like this review. Once again, if you have any comments, leave them down below. I invite you to like, share, and subscribe this with others. And as we always say on this channel, keep reading and keep on trekking.